answer you live or to answer you by a written answer. Our team also is working hard to offer the best broadcast, so please we count on your understanding in case there is any interruptions related to internet. If you have any inquiry, please feel free to send us an email at info@oecumenestudio.org. Leila and I are very excited to start the Nudging Limitations online talks as the third Architecture for Change public symposium. We started Architecture for Change at the margin of the discipline to become a collaborative platform for all. This platform is offering a series of workshops, seminars that aim to foster knowledge, exchange, and track innovations, different practices in the field of architecture, and in particular architecture and development in the world. This platform is developed and curated by Œcumene Studio. So now coming to the launching event, what is Nudging Limitations and why? Nudging Limitation is a series of talks looking to understand how different and mostly multi-layered limitations drive change that restructure the built environment and extend to rewrite or rewire the societal behavior and influence policies. We look at how nudging old and new imagined fixities of limitations through spatial practices allow meanings to re-emerge within them. For our event today, we will have 4 talks about this question of how. We are honored to have with us for the first talk, Rasha Arous, with her lecture, Displaced Placemaking and Community Organization Experiences of Refugee Hosting Area in Cairo. So just before that Rasha start her lecture, I want also to give you a brief biography about Rasha Arous. She holds a bachelor in civil engineering and master in urban planning in developing countries from Oxford Brookes University and a double master degree from University of Stuttgart and Ain Shams in integrated urban planning, urbanism, and sustainable design. She worked with the Aga Khan Trust for culture in rehabilitation projects in old cities, which involved rehabilitation and development programming in their spatial, socio-economic, cultural, and heritage-based programs. In 2008, she initiated and directed the old Aleppo social, let's say, economic development program in the old city of Aleppo and was the manager for 2 years. Later to the Syria crisis, she directed her research focus into the conjunction between urban development, displacement, and culture, and have been extensively researched refugees, cityscapes, community making, and mobility in addition to relationship to urban forms and governance. In 2013, she initiated and managed UNHCR Urban Development Program in refugee hosting areas and later managed the portfolio of economic inclusion of refugees. So, dear Rasha, it's now, I leave the stage for you.
Thank you very much, Insaf, Leila, Shirley, all the panelists and the organizers and co-organizers of this interesting and really exciting event. I am so pleased to see how your energies are tapping into some like exchange and informing experiences for all of us. So on the personal level also, I thank you. Today I tried to put together something around like a concept I'm sure you have been all reiterating and thinking and reflecting on. It's about, of course, placemaking. However, I will try to be specific into areas in Cairo and ask questions rather than give a lecture, because it's more of a discussion. These ideas are still in the formation state so far. So as I try to pose my question on the question of what is this and what is placed, some people call it in-placed people. So in order to set the scene, we need to understand also the image limitation here. So when we talk about displacement, usually, and refugees, and not only refugees, any displaced groups of people, especially if forcibly displaced, usually the first thing that comes to us is actually passivity, being victims. While these people, of course, we all know how effective they are in navigating their own choices and navigating the different options they would have in life. However, that image is quite weighing, and it has its influence on the general discourses that we always hear here and there. So the process of displacement and the journey takes a big deal of the discussions, of the exchanges, of the literature. So we also underemphasize the choiceful processes of emplacement and placemaking. I meant to put this photo because this photo for me is a paradox of what an urban refugee could be in the minds and images of people perceiving them. So this man is actually a gypsy from the Levant, and a group of gypsies in 2012 came to Cairo, and they set up their tents in an empty lot of land in Tabba. So basically having their tents within the building surrounding them, like the urban surrounding, was for me a little bit of a paradox image of what an urban refugee could be, because that image of a tent and of a camp and is the most prevalent one, while in urban settings usually it's not the case. So also mostly all what we hear in general around the question of displacement and refugees are around the question of integration. And integration, there is a huge and considerable literature that discusses the importance and the processes of integration, while at the same time, it's often under-interrogated if you or others, that the assumption that actually it's also a free will, a free will process. To integrate is something a man or a person must have the desire for, and it comes with on different levels. And it's like if you are legally and on a formal level integrated, you might not be socially integrated. Psychologically, you might feel different. Economically is a different level. So the huge literature on the different levels of integration sometimes miss on the understanding of the role of also the physical environment and the refugee sense of place in the newly reconstituted personal landscapes. Like we see refugees sometimes trying to avoid or to repress parts of their cultural identities in order to be accepted, or to actually highlight other parts. So these actually, the interplay they have with the dwelling unit, if we talk about the physical placemaking processes that start from the dwelling to the urban space, to the public space and urban space in general. So usually these processes that the refugee undertake, he or she are effectively participating into making their own choices and reintroducing themselves and their cultural identity into the new places of residence. I will be dwelling more on the urban space part, not on the dwelling unit part, which is very important. And it also translates into a lot of interpretations of how far people are making their spaces and feeling belonging and in a way getting into the life they would have as a new life. So assimilation is usually a word that I hear, for example, here in Canada a lot. They want people to assimilate, to get in a way dissolved in the hosting area. This is how the perception is widely prevalent, that assimilation is partially an important process through which cultures kind of come into a melting pot. And however, there are also in parallel to that, there are also resistance techniques that the refugees and the displaced people undertake in the context of adjustments and adaptations to both the social and physical environments. So I like this small saying of a professor of Turchun, who did a lot of anthropological studies of some Ethiopian refugees and a lot of actually good research on the question of integration. And he says that the experience of displacement is not only about the loss of a place and the pain and bereavement that this entails, it's also and inevitably about the struggle to make a place in the world. So, and this photo is from one of the informal areas in Cairo. It's a huge one. It's called Azbet al-Haggana, and it's popularly known as Arbaos, very famous one that has been extensively studied, and in which actually a group of Somali, Southern Sudani, and Somali and Sudani refugees live. So just to give you a little bit of an idea where I will be taking you into, so I will be taking you to some experiences of refugees placemaking in Egypt. And in Egypt, we have refugees coming from sub-Saharan Africa. These are the longest standing refugee population since like the turn of the mid of the 19th, 20th century till now. We had different influxes. Before that, Egypt had influxes of refugees, of Armenians, etc. But the question of refugees was not a more global one at that time, like it is now. It was less. Like Armenians are still in Egypt, like to a certain extent, 2000, but most of them have naturalized with the Egyptians. Some are still stateless. But if we talk about like the bulk of refugees today, it's mostly from, of course, Syria, half of the population in Egypt, and then sub-Saharan African. And then we have some from Yemen and some from Iraq. And Libyans are not considered as refugees, but many of them who are in Egypt came because of well-founded fear. So they are in a way displaced. So, and there are 58 nationalities registered in Egypt to our surprise with UNHCR. However, 8 of them has considerable numbers. So if we look at Cairo and the different urban spaces of Cairo, this is an updated map. I just updated with like getting some information from here and there. So we see that the Syrians, who constitute half of the population of the refugees, they live in different urban spaces in Cairo than like African refugees and other refugees. So we see African refugees more towards the center of the city, while we see Syrian refugees more in new cities. And you can see we have 8 new cities of Cairo, and in most of which we have a considerable number of Syrian refugees. So you can trace the numbers of Syrian refugees here. However, for African refugees, I couldn't do a lot of coloring so that the map is still readable. However, but you can see that actually with this, it's like mostly in these areas. And we see a lot of African refugees in areas that are categorized as informal settlements. This is important for our understanding because informal settlements provide direct access to informal economy, while if you are to live somewhere on the fringes of the city, this means that you have to invest a lot in social and economic infrastructure to build actually something and start it from scratch. Yet in the last few years, we've started to see some African refugees concentrations in 6 October and in a little bit in like Tagammu al-Awwal first settlement. This was basically because of the pull factor of the like economic opportunities that were stimulated by other refugees, like Syrians, for example. So a quick look would show us that actually refugees are quite dispersed in the city of Cairo. 75% of the Syrians are in new cities, while the great majority of Africans are within the existing city districts. This makes a big difference. We can see that the refugees have managed to create amazing trans-local connections, like they hop, for example, from 6 October to 10th of Ramadan, this is almost 90 kilometers, to move to like for less expensive housing, less expensive rents. And they really negotiate the spheres of the city, the geopolitical spheres of the city quite effectively. While for Africans, they managed like to live along the metro. So we find a huge community between Zaytoun, Al-Marg, and of course Ain Shams, and also Maadi. And when you see them, you feel like they have created translocal relationships of these spaces because of the metro, as if they were really geographically located next to each other. So there are certain dynamics that refugees create and link city spaces to each others that are different from what residents do. Not only on that level, but also they create linkages to extraterritorial spaces, like to cities they not only they come from, but they pass through. So this actually also charges the subconscious of the city a lot. And if we believe in like that, city has its own psychology, and its exposure would make a difference in its survival strategies, in its systems and its agencies. So I would like to talk today about this kilo arbaunus that I have a little bit dwelled about in the beginning of my presentation and showing you some photos from. This area is one of the like biggest informal settlements. It's said that it accommodates around 1 million, and it's one of the huge informal settlements on desert land. And this is different from an informal settlement on agricultural land in Egypt and in Cairo. Specifically, it makes a big difference in the composition, in the way the squatting process had taken place, etc. So this is not to scale. This is a map that shows an approximate concentration of some of the refugee community. And it is important to notice that in some parts of the districts of the 10th district in Madinat Nasser, that is an adjacent organized district to Azbet al-Haggana or Kilo Arbaunus, which is an informal, huge informal area. So refugees started to live here. And when the real estate market had higher rents for them, they moved to the Kilo Arbaunus and they started to set up communities there. So they actually created amazing linkages between these two areas. It is, of course, needless to say that these areas are connected, but the way the refugees connect and establish connections is quite different. So besides the different small community schools, the religious setups that are different even to the Egyptian ones, be them Christians or Muslims, and also the different local businesses, small coffee shops that they meet in, community centers, local NGOs, etc. There are specific streets that you feel that it's a refugee in a way scape. I will show you a little bit of that, but what is important is that also hybridity of spaces, of landscapes in the urban spaces start to show itself. Although if we compare the number of refugees to the Egyptians in these areas, it's quite like minimal. We think it is like not comparable indeed, but in general, hybrid refugee Egyptian landscape can be observed as in community nodes, in meeting points, and we will a little bit see like the same as my cover photo. I actually intended to put that cover photo because it doesn't say what I want to say. But if we take a little bit of a shift in the same place, we can see here, like it's a Sudanese run place in a way, but it's important for such an urban node to have, to cater for both refugee and poor Egyptians, and thus to establish actually the refugee business that actually is currently catering. It's a huge business of secondhand that refugees manage to get from Ataba and from other places and transport here, and to also have their own community meetings, provided all the actually difficulties, problems, rejections, and they try to position themselves within the local power structures that are also very important to understand, especially in Arbaunus, where we will see, like, so we can see refugees meeting up out in some specific areas that are dedicated for refugee young men or young girls. And it is in a way also changing some Egyptian economic activities to cater for not only economic activities and also some organization of space. And some, of course, of the NGOs that are there to serve. So you have your own kind of attempt to link to the urban space you live in. So I wanted to start actually with African refugees in Arbaunus, because this area is perceived as a hub for really troublemaking issues. If you look it up online, you will find a lot of actually argumentation around how dangerous, how like unpleasant to be, I would say, in this area. Yet also when you actually wander around, you would see how refugees actually are actively engaged in negotiating their own transitions. So that the transition, they all believe that Egypt is a transitory place and temporariness is there in their placemaking processes. Yet that temporariness is quite important because it has yielded a special type of arrangement that we can't see a lot somewhere else, where you feel that it is permanent in a way, if you feel it's a permanent. So it's also, again, to the question of how you perceive your experience in the city. So the intra-neighborhood and translocal connections that they establish are distinct to their presence and networking. These linkages charge the locality of ultra socio-economic resilience capacity. And that was actually seen in different spaces that they created with like a hybrid nature with Egyptians. So in these areas, they have to position themselves. There was a lot of also details about problems that happened in this area, but yet it has been dissolved by time. I think by the time also Egyptians got to understand the presence of refugees, because most of them have their own clan connections that are very tightly knit. So here, it's actually quite different from other refugee experiences that I will a little bit take you through, just to put a contrast here. So if we look at the placemaking, for example, of Syrians in 6th of October, and I always like to start with this sketch of a Syrian refugee who arrived downtown, have never seen 6th of October. He was actually a painter. So I knew him personally, and I told him, why would you like to go to 6th of October? Just to try to draw me what you feel you would see in 6th of October. And for him, 6th of October, as perceived, was a place where a Syrian school is, where he can express his political views, where they can have a picnic, because outdoors is very important for him and other Syrians, where they have wide streets, where there is a mosque that dispenses some support to some of them, and where there is like access to some Syrian food and restaurants, and like where they can congregate with others in these spaces. And then if we go to 6th of October and think a little bit about the city, it's not a classic port for Cairo, for refugees to come to. Here is the airport, and you really need to cross the Nile to come here. And usually people are not directly going to areas that are next to the airport. They would go to 6th of October, understand what is there next, other places in the city, and then they would move. 6th of October is quite becoming had been an important station. And why? There are different pull factors. Part of them relate to the earlier presence of two universities where many Syrian students were studying, and they were pull factors to their families and acquaintances, and then that community cohesion pull factor played a role, etc. So there is an interplay of a mix of pull factors. Also, the real estate values in 6th of October were much less, and the presence of an Iraqi refugee community made it feel better for Syrians to be there. So it's a different interplay of pull factors. But if we go to 6th of October, like the image is like Syria town that we see everywhere. We hear about how bustling the Syrian and bustling and like also nourishing the Syrian businesses are, while actually a lot of refugees are in housing projects that are on the margins of 6th of October. And it is quite, I find that quite strong placemaking strategy to be somewhere that is excluded, that requires a lot of infrastructure. It's much more difficult than being in an informal settlement in Cairo to be in an exclusionary, faraway housing project, and yet be able to actually do something. And not only do something, and actually attract Egyptian migrants to these areas. So if we look at the Husari area, that is the most famous bustling hub. Of course, it has created a lot of activities since the presence of Syrians in 2012, let's say, basically. And they have created new activities. They have, these activities have changed over time. And it's a mix of, at the beginning, it was a lot of civil society activism, but then it moved into more economic than social and kind of political. But yet, still, actually, what is important about this experience of the economic activities of Syrians is that it comes basically also from their background as city dwellers. So Syrians who are in Egypt are mostly from cities, not like the ones who went to Jordan or Lebanon by land, just crossing the borders, coming from the villages around Dar'a or villages around Homs area. It's more of a community that decided to leave and go by plane mostly. So we find a lot of city residents who have negotiated urban economies before, who have a quite strong experience in trades, in actually understanding the urban economy dynamics. And these were actually the best to exchange with for Egyptian rural migrants who have much less, like these new cities are fully dependent on rural migrants to urbanize. Of course, we all understand that. And the allocation of them in specific areas was to move some of the rurals who want to work in the industrial cities of these areas and to find like jobs, etc. But of course, the capacities to negotiate an economy and to create an economy somewhere in the desert that has no base is quite challenging. And here we find how the placemaking capacities of some of the refugees are actually not only informing, but actually teaching in a way. And they have been stimulants for the urban development in these areas. It's really needless to say, there are a lot of studies, like Œcumene did a full study on this area, and other agencies, like there is also published studies on the economic activities of Syrians, specifically like industries, and how they created backward and forward linkages. And I give you one example. In this area, for example, there is one famous butcher who sells meat, and imagine to sell that meat, he is breeding sheep in Basatin area, and he had to plant a specific type of like a grass that Syrians exactly know that would have a different meat test. So imagine the amount of backward linkages on the like chain of the economy that they have managed to create during this. And not only that, also it goes to private labeling. Like you have in that area tahine that is actually privately labeled by some of the shops. So it's quite an interesting like pot for study of some other people are really interested to look at these linkages, not only at the like image of like how it is a hub and that's it. It's more than this. It's like it has a lot of also interesting linkages. So, and like the Syrians also managed to cluster around the different districts of 6th of October city, and they have different strategies for clustering. At the beginning, when they came, there was always a local faith-based structure that would dispense support. So they would go because they needed that kind of hafen, and they would disperse around that. But then the dispersal strategies varied and changed. And it's very different for African refugees. If we think of those who come, they come to some little community structures, and then they start from there, or to some brokers from their communities who sometimes jeopardize as well their options and choices. The last area I would go to is actually, it's Rehab and Tagammu Awal, which is the first settlement in New Cairo, because they have also a contrasted story. So while in Rehab, you see, there are a lot of well-off Syrians who are indeed displaced, even if they are not registered as refugees, but they came with some money. Some of them have their industries or their trades, etc., and they lived in Rehab city. So there is a huge number of Syrians, or not a huge, a considerable, to a certain extent, like thousands of Syrians in Rehab. But also that presence of Syrians in Rehab have introduced a lot of lower like groups to come to live in Tagammu Awal because it's more affordable to cater for the Rehab people. So they would live in Tagammu Awal, establish their own businesses to cater for those who would come from Rehab and buy from Tagammu Awal. For me, Tagammu Awal, the place I would show you in a photo a little bit later, is one of those places I believe is a good example of how actually new cities in Cairo could function. It is because, you know, mostly they build housing in these new cities, not communities. And then the introduction of a community is important. And the mixed use for Egyptians is quite inherited in their cultural identity. They like mixed use of housing and commercial and other activities. So we will see a little bit, like, if you look at this photo, this is a photo of 7 malls that were established for from Syrians in this area that had nothing around, called Al-Banafsaj district in At-Tajammu al-Awwal. And only few Syrians opened these malls for gowns and wedding dresses. And together with that, there is only one shop that sells housing supplies. So they actually stimulated the finishing of the housing structures around this. And it was not finished. When I went the first time, and I have all the photos, there was nothing around. Only because of this like stimulation. And their clientele are from Mansoura, from Upper Egyptian governorates, and from also the Nile Delta governorates, are not from Cairo. So they have their own clientele who they trust this area, and the clientele comes here. So they created a whole movement to the area like that was not there at all. And then the central market of this area in Tajammu al-Awwal has a quite an interesting marketplace under this housing project with lots of Syrian shops to cater for. Now, of course, after this development, also people who live in Tajammu al-Awwal, not only the main reason why people started economic and to live here, which is the people of Rehab. And if we look in general at Rehab, we see like a Syrian woman sitting at this interesting place in one of the plazas in Rehab, which has a fountain, which was also newly used by Syrians a lot, especially women, to actually sit around. So it's Rehab is already, of course, we all understand, it has its own public space. It has its capacity to get you to have an interesting outdoor experience, but it was not much used by Egyptians. And this is as per the city hall of Rehab, that actually Syrians introduced something like sitting on grass, nigila in Egyptian, that they didn't like very much. The city administration didn't like that very much. But this also approaches to public spaces, and having a public space used well is also something that some of the refugees have brought with them into the public space, kind of adjustment and adaptation uses. So I just wanted to raise some questions that actually the experience of placemaking across Cairo quite vary. It varies because of the host-guest relationship. So for example, if you are in an informal area within a very well-established community, so you feel like a guest, indeed. But if you are in an area like Rehab, where you pay for all the services and other people, Egyptians, pay exactly like you, and you kind of have money in exchange of protection, in exchange of different activities that you want to have. So the host-guest relationship is quite blurred because it's your money mostly that is hosting you, rather than a community that you kind of landed into. It's still there, of course. Of course, there are relationships and systems and agencies that you need to adjust to, but not as clear and important for your life and protection as it is when you actually settle somewhere where you have a huge, strong power structure of a clan affiliation or power brokers getting people to be protected. So you need to position yourself within that. Yet it's important to understand that the refugee background and capacities and numbers are important in defining that. And also that the way in which the profile of the hosting community, the economic and political setup, and how they perceive the hosted is also something that plays a very important role. And then, of course, as you saw, urban form makes a big difference, and governance structures, and the social, spatial, and economic situation of these areas. So I wanted to actually raise these questions with you, because it is important that we think of the placemaking processes from the perspective of the common space, and how approaches to common space could make the common space more of a place of belonging, even if in a temporary sense. So these are my concluding things, how refugee spaces actually are products, but of different dynamics, like relationships, sensations, and also a lot of emotions. And they embody convoluted meanings and aspirations, and are extra charged. And also they incite the formal and informal political, economic, social, and psychological attributes of the organizations of the city and its residents. And refugees with migrants, and they work and rework the urban spaces in that city. And they also create new experiences to the city that actually make its life a bit different from when you have like no kind of refugees or migrants there. So by this, I would like to just conclude and thank you a lot for listening. Any questions, please let me know. I'm not following up on the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rasha, for this very deep presentation where you are really give a good mapping, actually, and understanding of the dynamics of placemaking, refugeehood, and how it's also Cairo, or the greater Cairo, offered at a certain moment pockets to negotiate space, pockets to be able to create economy, formal and informal, and to also, we can see that the example of Cairo in itself and how the public space of the public sphere, it's actually not about something that we can design or think about it, but as much as it's about different dynamics and negotiation of let's say power, relationship, and also moments of temporarity. We have, I think, for the questions, I have something about, there is a question from Selma Magd. She's saying, let me see here the questions. What is the, oh no, Omar, he's asking, what is the relief offices in Map Legend? Rasha. This is the first question we got when we were presenting.
Rasha, the map you had for Al-Husari Mosque, yes, no, after that, yes, this one. Rasha, you're muted, please unmute yourself.
Sorry.
No problem.
There was at the beginning a lot of agencies like that started working with refugees, especially Syrians, that set up their presence, physical presence within the Husari area. They have changed over time, but it's important to understand that at the beginning, the stimulation of activities, different activities started with different sets of activities, not only economic. And that was an important thing because when refugees come, they embody a lot of political activism, right? This is basically why they are there. And they need to express that directly. And this was one important aspect about 6th of October, that it was, the image of 6th of October is that it was a kind of an autonomous space for them to express their identity. Of course, it is always under control, and modes of control are always there. I would talk a lot about the modes of control that are in Al-Husari area by the formal and non-formal governance structures. But what I was trying to highlight in the presentation, otherwise it would be too long, is the part that the refugees contributed to, which is the part of creating their own spaces, spaces of activism, be it political, social, or be it economic. Of course, what remains today is more the economic, but we need to understand the history that it didn't only start with the economic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rasha, thank you very much for this very interesting reality, let's put it this way. It is for me, looking at it and thinking about the book of Doc Sanders about arrival cities and how these pockets actually create, let's say, an infrastructure to people to reinsert and reroute themselves. After all, we're talking about the rerouting process, whether it's going to be a temporary or like, let's say, you know, more permanent than expected. It is fascinating as well how you're portraying this idea of inclusion and exclusion out of choice, also not only by the structures that are available and the communities that are available, but also out of a personal choice of the displaced themselves, which is, I would say, kind of dismissed a lot in literature, in the existing literature at least, regarding urban refugees. Maybe I will ask there are a few questions.
Yes.
That has been posed. So I don't know, Yasmin, would you like to ask your question live, or should I ask for you?
Yes, I think it's not possible for the attendees to speak. I'm not sure.
I think let me try.
No, I think it's a webinar. So actually,
Wait.
Yasmin, she's asking, what are the problematics with the coexistence of formal and informal settlements, and does that materialize architecturally? So this is the question of Yasmin.
Thank you, Yasmin, for your question. Let's divide the question. It's a huge question. Of course, it's a very important one because you can do a thesis on that. On one hand, informal settlements in Egypt, as you know, are actually for rural migrants. They depend basically on a lot of rural migration, urbanization processes that take place because of rural migration. When people move to these informal settlements, they have their own affiliations and community structures. And they, at the beginning, when they start like residing and forming their communities, you can more boldly see these differences and these affiliations. So you have like people from different familial structures coming from this specific village of Upper Egypt. And then those dynamics of power structure play a very important role. By time they actually they are alleviated. People have their own intermarriages. They are now in the city, and they alleviate these types of polarization of, in a way, it is polarized at the beginning. So you need to position yourself. So if you're a refugee, you need to actually find yourself within those structures in an informal area, or you need to have a strategy of resistance and avoidance. And this was mentioned in the presentation. I have tried, I haven't mentioned it specifically, but avoidance is like when you avoid. So it's your strategy of resisting these structures, but that actually puts a lot of pressure on you. When you live somewhere and you are not kind of totally understanding the
We can't hear you, Rasha. I think
you have in your heart a lot of pressure. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
we
not
lost
muted.
you for the last. We lost you for the last sentence.
I was just saying that actually positioning oneself within these structures would be a very important aspect. Although informal settlements are much easier to negotiate in terms of economy, because they cater for a different spectrum of like housing structures, also exactly like new cities. They have a lot of access to informal economy. So you could directly find a job or somewhere, or be a vendor somewhere, while in other places you cannot vend like the way you do in, like if you go to 6th of October in one of these housing areas that are really remote, well, even if you vend with a little bit of food, it's difficult to find the clientele. While in any of the informal settlements, you can find ways to negotiate the economy. So of course, it's quite different. The structure is different, but also the background of the refugee plays a very important role. What they want from the city, what experience they want to have, and also they want to shape, not only have and shape, because they can shape their own experiences. And some of the examples I gave you, like if you go to Hassanin Dusui market in Hadaya El Maadi, it's impressive. It's one of the most cosmopolitan spaces in Cairo, I have seen, because of the different refugee, not only refugee, and also Western African, Nigerian, other communities, all establishing their own businesses, in addition to Syrians, in addition to Egyptians who are also displaced. So informal settlements, for me, frankly, they are more viable. They are more vital also. Like they have a lot of liveliness and activity. So they could be more attractive for some of the refugees. But for the Syrians, they were not that attractive. They don't like them. For them, the lifestyle experience in the city is very important. And this is what also I try to show. But also, they have the capacity to create their own economic activities, even when in areas that doesn't have the infrastructure for that. That's it.
It's amazing. So we have thank you, Rasha, for answering the questions and dedicating your time for this. We have another question from Sokar. Refugee settlements are usually placed in towns a bit far from the city center. In your opinion, how close the settlements should be to the town's neighborhood, and how the integration of the refugee and host community can be naturally achieved through the design? Thanks. I think you, or partially you answered that, but you can maybe briefly answer that?
You know, of course, refugee settlements are usually either in camps in some countries that allow camps, like for example in Jordan they have some camps, and in Lebanon they have camp-like places. It's not a camp, but it's camp-like. Like it's really kind of ghettos of refugees to live in. In Egypt there is no camp confinement policy, which is great because this is what a refugee would dream of. Refugees definitely don't like the camp life a lot, especially at the beginning, until they form their own placemaking and form a town from their camp and make it like their home. They would feel better about the camp. But I don't know, my colleagues who are camp experts are here, and they would talk much more about the camp experience of refugees. As for cities, refugees actually go in the city and live everywhere. The city is very important for them because some refugees want to be hidden, and the city allows you to be hidden. Also, they want to escape the international development and humanitarian regime, which is very important because international regime wants to manage people's exclusion. You know, when you put people in camps, you are like, you can manage everything. You can manage the food coming in, the life they have, the activities they would do, the streets. So here, refugees are liberated in a way. This is why they actually left their homes. They want to have their own choiceful like options. So this is on one hand. So there are no settlements of refugees in Cairo or around Cairo. They choose to be somewhere. But when they choose to be somewhere, of course, they need something we call safety nets, people around them who are acquaintances or people from their areas of origin. This is very important for their psychological and social well-being. And thus, you find some communities of refugees living around each other because they need to support each other. They need to have their own schools. And I don't mean here to nurture exclusion of refugees, but it's important to understand that it is important for them. And then it's important to let go with the refugee-specific activities that they want to establish for themselves. So we cannot come with an top-down argument or top-down approach saying refugees, you need to go and mingle in public school, for example, if that is not their choice for integration. So we are not nurturing exclusion, but we are giving them their specific presence and specific choice. We are giving a weight to that, and that is important. So we need to actually advocate for a way in between. We don't want to talk a lot about integration that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. And coexistence here comes as a natural product of people engaging together, you know, engaging in like economic activities like the small community node that I showed you in my presentation, where there is a lot of second-hand work. People mingle, and then coexistence is there, but without thinking of coexistence. And the design comes, I believe, is a very important role to have these spaces there in the city, not only for refugees, but also for Egyptians. I tell you, in Hadai al-Ma'adi, a lot of Egyptians are displaced from upper Egyptian parts, and they needed also that psychological support of a space that is inclusive. So, well, we just need to be real and inclusive in our designs. And then the designs would come naturally to accommodate everyone, be them locals or refugees or whoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Rasha, thank you very much. It's really enriching. I mean, this thought of, you know, hiding and being one in the crowd, unseen and unspotted, I think it has been a mechanism not only in Egypt, but on the route also to Europe. All the refugees, or all, let's say, the people who are seeking asylum are being on the route. And it has been also like a lot of spatial, let's say, temporalities also are emerging through these routes as well. This idea also for me, what you were talking about, it's also about the perceptions of scales and scales of placemaking. So is it the city? Is it the place? Is it the house? Is it the urban space? Is it the backyard? Is it the schoolyard? So these kind of perceptions, I would say, also make a huge difference of being in the city, the right in being in place, or the right to place, let's put it this way. So this is a huge discussion. If I don't belong, but I still have some rights here, these legitimacy questions are also very interesting. And yeah, some studies has been also showing in an example for Brussels, the importance of these invisible networks that you were calling them safety nets, and how they actually allow certain performance of practices of survival also to emerge on the road. And it is not as black and white as it is put as usual, you know, in this debate. Well, you know, legal, unlegal, it's formal, not formal. It has been always this iteration between both. And I think it always dwells in the shades of gray, right?
Yes, it's the top-down perception of things, and especially I think Rasha, she was said something very important. It's about the non-control, and to try to not control, which is completely a kind of an oxymoron with the fact of planning and design, which actually act as a way to control people's life and the way how they live. And the power of, that's why even Egypt, it's a very interesting case of how also we see the refugee community and the host community, they have been at a certain moment find their way. And I keep also saying again, the word negotiating, the process of negotiation and renegotiation is very, very important. And this is, thank you very much, Rasha, for this wonderful, intervention. And it opens, you know, a lot of questions as well. And I hope that with our next guest lecture, Shirley, because she's also working in refugee camps, and we have now, we'll discover a new perspective or another perspective from another side, another refugee camp in another country. So thank you, Rasha. Again.
Thank you. Thank you, Rasha, again from my side as well. It has been, as usual, great to see you personally and also in a presentation.
Yes.
So I will allow me to introduce our second speaker and guest and also friend. Shirely Rodrigues Sampaio. She's Brazilian. She's the country manager of Global Ahead in Iraqi Kurdistan. She is the founder of Hope Spaces. And she has been doing this project for a lot of refugees and hoping to extend to IDP kids as well. She has been working in the Middle East for 7 years right now, and she has a background in psychology and theology. Shirley is a dear friend, and we have luckily met her in a very interesting virtual meeting. However, it turned out to be hopefully a long time friendship. So Shirley, I leave the floor to you. Please, let's welcome Shirley to this.
Here we go. Everyone.
Thank you so much. I'm just trying to share my screen here. Just give me a second.
Yes, take your time. Take your time.
Take your time.
And I wanted also to take, you know, the Dr. Bassant, she's with us as well here from Egypt. She will be tomorrow presenting with us. So here we go. Welcome everyone. And I also want to say that we have a lot of people who are watching us on the social medias, so following us at the same time.
Can you guys see my screen?
Oh yes, we can see it. Very,
yes.
very,
oh, that's good. Great, great. Well, as Leila said, I'm Shirley. I'm from Brazil, and I've been working in Kurdistan for over 7 years now. It has been a pleasure to be here with such a strong women. I was very thankful to meet you guys, and it's an honor to hear Rasha. It was very, very nice. It was a lot, but it's super good to hear that everybody's doing their part, and even that sometimes sounds like a little thing, but if everybody keep doing what they have to do, it will be a big proportion, right? As I said, I'm from Brazil, and I came here to Iraq to work with refugees. In the beginning was just a dream that I had it as a teacher, to have a place that kids could go to have a safe environment, not just educational, but a safe environment that they could feel loved and secure. So that was the major idea of this dream. So then when this whole crisis in Syria start, I was here already. I was just arrived here, was brand new in the country, getting to know the people and the culture, because the culture is completely different than ours. But I adjusted pretty well, actually. Never had a problems. Actually, people here are much more like Brazilians than I thought. Even together as a family, as it's incredible. Like you should, if you've never been here, you're more than welcome to come to visit. I'm pretty sure it's gonna impress you. We do have a challenge when we arrive, especially because I didn't speak none of the language. I didn't speak Kurdish, I didn't speak Arabic, I just spoke English. So that was my first challenge, is getting to the culture and to get to the language learning. I'm still learning, to tell you the truth, because it's 3 different dialects. And when you think you're learning something, you realize you don't know nothing. So this is still a challenge for a woman being a program manager and organization manager, country manager in a country that you don't speak the language fluent. It's kind of rough, but it's doable. It is doable. So that's when I got. So I flew from Brazil to Iraq with the dream of opening a project that could help kids, refugee kids, to have a better life. I got from Leila this map, and I thought it was very interesting because I did know the numbers, but I didn't know when they flew. So so in Iraq, I think nowadays it is this many refugees from Syria still. So when this whole conflict happened, a bunch of people just flew from there, and then now they are in different countries. It's terrifying to know that how many people had to leave their houses, and actually I had a pleasure of meeting these young girls who were like amazingly doing fine in another country that is not home. I can't imagine the situation. I just can't. It's beyond my understanding. So this is what happened in Iraq in 2013. 207 and 053 people arrived to Iraq, and the major of the Syrian people are in the Kurdistan region. It's the north of Iraq. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the geography here, but Kurdistan is a region, is a separate region, independent, on the north of Iraq. So they are Kurds. I think you all know who are the Kurds. Kurds are a group of an ethnic and a group of peoples that they are divided in 5 countries. They are in Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Armenia. I'm not even sure if it is still Kurds and Armenian, but I know the beginning of the Kurds were there. Now they are among the world, but the majority of them are in this region, in these 5 countries. So this area is called Kurdistan, where the Kurds are. I live in Kurdistan region in the north of Iraq for 7 years. And I'm working now with Syrians that are Kurds too. So it's very interesting. Even that they are the same people, they are so different. But it's cool actually, because they have the same tradition. What makes easier is a challenge in the beginning, because you don't know like what to approach, if it's a right approach, because it's different people from the village than people from the cities. As I think Russia mentioned this difference too, like more urban people that village people, they are completely different. I work with more village people, so even the culture is different. This is the camp where I work. It's called kawergosk camp, and it is a huge place. Our project is exactly right here in this area. So this project was a little, it actually was fun to start it, but in the beginning, we thought that nobody would accept it, this project in any camp, because we were women and we had such a small goal. And then we got on the kawergosk campaign. We presented the project. A friend of mine and I, we presented the project to the camp management, and he was so surprised and so happy that happened. So then he opened this place for us. We work in a container. They are in the place that we work. It's 4 containers, and we use 2 of them because they are bigger and they feed more kids. Was in the beginning when we start to work there. So you can see like the carpets are red, the curtains are red. I hated this place at the beginning. That was actually a problem, because they didn't want to take all that out, because they used to tell me that was so cold. So that was my first conflict that I had as a foreigner, because first of all, it's carpet. It's very hard to clean because it fuel with dust, and they didn't want to take it out. And then I was like, no, this is not gonna happen. I stepped at it and I was like, no, we're gonna take all out, and we did it. So this was the first contact that we had with the kids. The first time that we were gathering and getting to know them. After a lot of work to put all together, we did gather this many kids to get to know them. So let me talk a little bit about the project, and this is already new, not new, this has been 3 years now. The activity with the kids outside. This is, I don't know if you can see here, but the curtains change, and that's a good thing. It looks very pretty now, very perky and happy, a happy place. I'm very happy for that. So Hope Space, it's a project of Global Ahead. Is an organization, it's a Brazilian organization, but the main base, it is in US. And we work with preschool education, sport, health programs, and others. The Hope Space is just here in Iraq, but Global Ahead works in other countries like Jordan and countries in Africa. I don't know like each of the works that they have, but I know all over Africa and Jordan we are working at. And I think now they are starting a project, a sport project in China. So we work all over the world. But we are all Brazilians, based in the US, but all Brazilians. So Hope Space is a preschool, a social educational program that benefits 120 kids. Actually, it's wrong. I'm so sorry. It's 220 now. Children at kawergosk refugee camp in Erbil, Kurdistan, Iraq. The program was planned in January 2017 and implemented on July of the same year. Hope Space provides the opportunity for kids to develop the skills needed for beginning school life. Hope Space also concerned with the complete formation of individual, considering all areas of children's life, including family and friends. Also, Hope Space provided jobs and refugees living in the camp. That's what makes Hope Space different. The cool thing about the project, one of the things that I put when I had the proposal for the project, not just for my organization, but for the camp management, it was to be working with the teachers inside the camp. So I wanted to provide jobs, and with that we had to train them, and to find somebody who spoke Arabic fluent and who was an educator. It was a little bit trouble, but I did it, and it did work. So for 3 months, I trained the teachers, not just on the behavior with the kids, but to train them how to work with Montessori methodology and with the methodology that we work. So even the stories that the kids have, it's all found on behavior, on their well-being. Like they learn how to say sorry, excuse me, how to do not break things that doesn't belong to them, or even if it belongs to them, is not need to break or to destroy the things that they have. So those are little things that sound so little, but when they are lost and they don't have somebody to teach them, it won't work. we have like a very visible example in the camp with the teenagers. They just built it some panels of solar panels that cost like millions of dollars. It was a lot of money invested. It's for their own good, and the teenagers they throw stones on. You know, so those are problems we're facing because the kids, the teenagers, they don't have as much, they don't have activities after school. So they get in trouble. That's what they do. Teenagers are teenagers anywhere. It's not because they are just in a camp. It's the age. So now with the kids, we see the difference because it's been 3 years now that we are working, and we see it's visible the difference with the kids. The kids are very polite. They are very polite. They are obedient, extremely obedient. I mean, sometimes we have to discipline them. Yeah, sometimes they just don't stay alone for 2 minutes to think about things. But that's pretty much what we do. We don't punish the kids. We teach them. We teach them the way of how to get better. Not punishing, but teaching. That's my way of thinking, and I think that's what I've been teaching teachers here, to not punish but to teach, because they work much better when you teach. So it works for us as adults. Imagine for kids. Okay, let's see. So I work with kids in an amazing age. I love this age time because they suck it up as a sponge. So whatever you teach, they get it. It is incredible. The program is tailored for children from 3 to 6 years old, with activities that will prepare them to enroll for school life. Hope Space is a safe place where these kids can learn to play instead of spend their time wandering at the refugee camp. This is one of the first pictures that we had it there, even before. Now it got better, but before used to be tents, and on the winter used to be terrible, and on summer used to be awful because it gets hot and it gets really cold here. So it was in the beginning, when we started the project, it was just 55 kids we had it, and 3 times a week. We always made sure, even with the 55 kids, that we always had 50% of girls and 50% of the boys. One of the challenges we have here is to teach the boys to respect, well, not to just respect, because they do respect. How am I going to put that? Well, to teach them that the girls, they have the same rights as they are boys. So it's okay for girls going to the school with the boys, especially in this age, because this age they actually don't divide it. They're kids. They look at each other as kids, not as a woman, as a man. In this age, you teach them that it is like that. It doesn't need to be different. So it's funny actually, because they even fight like boys sometimes. And then we look at it, it was like, it's so funny because, you know, they're girls. And sometimes we teach them, we tell the boys like how to be more tender with the girls because they are girls. But and different than that, like they play the same. Both of them, they play football. They play like hide and seek. It's all together. It's nothing different to none of them. So this is one thing I make sure that it keeps working like this. As I told you, I'm the program leader and I'm the founder too. This was an idea that came back there in Brazil. I always dream about doing something the way I do. I usually say that people has dreams, like, oh, I'm gonna accomplish this in the future. I'm gonna be this person in the future. And I love to talk with kids, 20-year-old kids, that they look at just like, oh, I'm dreaming about this and I'm dreaming about that. And I look at them, it's like, I live my dream. After years of working, I live my dream. So our team is it's basically me, and I have 4 teachers and 2 security guards. All of them are from the camp. They are Syrians from the camp. I'm the only one that doesn't live inside of the camp, but the rest of them are all from there. I've been before I was on the project before, because it's been 3 years the project, and I've been here for 7. I used to teach in a school called Media School here in Erbil, and it was like a drastic change, because I came from a school that had a wealthy kids to a place that the kids had absolutely nothing. And then it was actually very fulfilling to be working with the kids who had nothing, because they had much more than the kids that had everything. So, and actually the cool thing afterwards, it was that the kids that I used to teach at school, they came to visit, and they came to play sports, and they came to paint the walls, and it was a fun thing to match them, and they speak their own language together, even that it was not the same dialect. They understood each other, and they sang to the kids, and I mean, it was amazing. So here is the art program that we do. It's so cute. Like, one thing that that was funny, one day I saw a little kid coming to the project with a plastic bag and a notebook inside. That broke my heart. That destroyed me for a second. I was like, a plastic bag for real? So I went there, I called my organization, I said, like, I want to buy backpacks, and I'm going to buy them, because this is not okay. And then they were like, we completely agree with you. And money, it's my main challenge. So I was like, I'm going to save money. Don't worry, I'll make it happen. And we did it. So every year we replaced our backpacks, and we were lucky enough to get a donation from a friend of mine who donated like 225 backpacks for this year. So you can see, like, if you go to kawergosk camp and see kids wearing this colorful backpack, you will know that he's coming from the project. So that's a cool thing. Now all of them, they have backpacks. Here's how work our daily activities. Another thing that I make sure that works in our project, we don't deal with technology. In 3 hours that they stay with me, it's no phone, no TV, just playing. We found by studies, and I'm a very big fan of Montessori methodology. What is a instructive way to teach kids how to be independent? For me, I think, like, kids, they need to play more nowadays. They don't play enough. So in the time that they are with me, they're playing. They're having fun. They're listening to stories, and they're having quality time. I make sure that happens at least 3 hours of their days. So this is our curriculum. That's how we work. As I told you, we work with Montessori, and we teach them to, like, health awareness. What is super cool, because especially now with this COVID season, most of the parents, they send a message, was like, oh, it's so good that I don't have to teach my kids how to wash their hands, because they already know. Or it's the time that they learn how to tie their shoes, or even put the shoes on. Is the cutest thing. You get it there. You see, like, when they arrive, they take their little shoes on, they take it off, and they put it, like, on the cabinet right away. You don't have to tell them anymore. Just tell them once, and then they are very disciplined to do that without you asking it. And in the way back, they know where their shoes are, and they pick it up and they put it on. And sometimes we have to help them when they are too small, like 3-year-olds. But the 4, 5, and 6, they do it on their own. It's super cute. This is the art projects that we do with them, all manually, and we cut, and then they glue, or they paint. So this is our morning schedule, but now we have an afternoon classes too. This is part of our kids. Those kids, most of them, they stay with us for 3 years. This is inside of the classroom. So it's story time. I was even talking to Leila yesterday. One thing that it's so cute. They sit, you see, they are very small, but when it comes to story time, they sit, they listen. And if you ask them afterwards to talk back, they will tell you the whole story again. And actually they will gonna input as in their life, their daily base, how they gonna use. So you can see here in the back that we use pictures and books. So in the morning, usually when they get in the classroom, they go in the window and check if it's raining, it's sunny, or it's snowing, or whatever weather it is, they know. And they learned that in Arabic, they learned that in English and in Kurdish. They graduate. That's my saddest and happiest day, because the day of graduation is the day that they're gonna go to school, to the first grade, and it's the time to say goodbye to us. And some of them, they stay with us for 3 years, so it's kind of hard to see them go, but it's so good to see that they are going. So it's a sweet bitter taste, but it's always very good to see it. So this is the project. This is the Hope Space project, and please remind me, Leila, if I forgot something. Feel free to remind me.
No, you were great.
Thank you, Shirley, for the, let's say, your project and what you are doing in the camps. And we see here, like it's very, very deep in terms of experiences, because here we see at least the backstage. Sometimes we can, from reading about, the camps, etc. And here we are seeing also your own experience as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
For me, was very important to highlight also projects and actors who are also making some change and taking decisions to change lives. Education is a human right. It's something that is very, very important. And especially that sometimes we forgot that in camps or for displaced communities, we have children. We have children that are born in camps. We have children that are coming, they are leaving their teenagerhood. And they are very important phases in human life, and finding themselves in a situation where there is a very scarcity of resources, to be able to create a space of, let's say, I don't like the word, but it's kind of normality as well. And
Definitely.
yes, and you're talking like, you see, your vision of a teacher is very interesting for me to see how you can perceive the reality there in the camps for the children. And I'm sure that you have loads of stories and loads of, palpable realities that you have been experiencing. And also, I wanted just to ask you about how you can perceive the future now, how you can really see it in terms of this, I understand you wanted to create the safe bubbles within the camps where children have the right to play, to learn, and also to be supported because they need it, especially at that age. And that their parents doesn't have that luxury anymore to be there for the children. So just tell me how you feel today in yes.
Yeah, sure. Just I'm gonna give you one story and then I'll tell you the future. But in the beginning, in the first year we were there, we gathered the kids and we asked them what they were going to do. If you ask, and I'm serious, if you ask any 3-year-old, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid, what are they gonna be? What they're gonna grow up? They're gonna say doctors. They're gonna say firemen. They're gonna say police. Here they want to be a Peshmerga in any cost, or a teacher, or whatever. Kids are kids. But the first impression we had with our kids when they first came to us, it was like, what are you gonna be when you grow up? They were like, I don't know, I just want to be alive. I was like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. I cannot deal with that. I can't. So in the first, for me as an educator, the first impression that I had on the project, it was frustration that I had it. because I couldn't imagine a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-year-old kid with no perspection. And I said, like, I really did. I said, like, God have a mercy on me, because I had no way that I could hear that again. So then we start to work on job wise for kids. Like, you have hope, you have expectations, you can study, you can do better. And we start to give us examples of people who did okay after camps. So now, after 3 years, it's so good to sit with them, because most of them, 80% of the kids, they want to be teachers. It has one little girl that was very interesting, but it was so okay, her answer. She looked at us, she was like, I want to be a wife, I want to be a bride, and I want to have 2 kids. And she was 5. We were like, really? Really? She was like, yes. But at the end, we knew she wants to be a bride, because she wants to dress like a bride for one day, you know? But it was okay for her to be, she wanted to be something. And nowadays it's completely different. Our future now, our main goal, is to open another project in another camp. So we have this camp that's the biggest camp that we have here in the region, at least in the city here, they call Aga Khan. So this is our goal for 2020. We wanted to have a project, a bigger project, that we can have more kids, and so we're gonna be working with more kids.
Okay.
So our main goal is to spread the project in another camps. So that's the main goal. Yeah.
Well, Shirley,
I
thank
think you
you.
guys have a question. I don't know who's there. But if you guys have questions, please ask.
So Shirley, I will maybe come in a little bit. And first, thank you very much for this nice, heartwarming presentation. I will put it this way: heartbreaking, heartwarming presentation. So maybe I would like first to pose some kind of thoughts that we have already talked about, maybe offline, but I think it would be very important also to bring them out. That how much the relation and the pressure, how much the pressure that is on the family itself, being a refugee, is also presenting itself. And yeah, the relation of the psychological status of the family as a whole, and kind of yeah, approaching the kids, and also how your space is also helping with that. So it would be very nice to also to a little bit shed a light about the effect on the parents that you are trying to as well help.
As I told you, it's like it's no expectations. This doesn't come from the kids. It comes from the parents. So when they see their kids starting being different, even at home, it helps them to understand that it is a hope. It will come out. But at the same time, it's very hard for them, because they don't understand yet, or just like I didn't reach the point that I could go to every house to talk to them, but that everything's going to be okay somehow. But it's hard and I understand them, because imagine you having your kids in a place that you don't know if tomorrow you're going to be okay, or if you're going to get out, like, where are you going? As we were talking yesterday, it's like, it's no place to go back, you know. So this is another struggle that I see very clear, and I completely understand when they literally have no hope. So did I answer your question?
Well, I do understand how much frustration also lies on the parents, you know, feeling that also they cannot provide to their children a lot of opportunities as well, and it's a huge challenge. And I'm sure you had already your own share of challenges with the families themselves, with your teachings. So how did that go?
To tell you the truth, usually when they are very present on their kids' lives. I have few kids that they are orphans. The parents die in the war or die of disease. So I have few kids that they are orphans. But the majority of the parents, they come to parent meetings and they are always thankful. It's so good to hear them saying to me like, oh, my kid, it was like that, and then now he's like this, and the impact that you guys have. And it's so good to hear that. It's so for me, it's an accomplishment. That's why I said I'm living my dream, because the project does work. And so actually we have a great relationship with the community. I make sure too that I know the people who works in the bazaar there, because it has a little bazaar, and you've been there, so you see it has a couple of stores. I make sure I buy the snacks there, and I buy bread there. So my veggies and fruits I get there. So then I get to know them, and most of them, they are people that their kids were there with me. So it's a cool thing. So I have, they know my car, they know it's me. They don't even stop me at the front door anymore, because they know it's me already. So I got to know them, and when I'm there, I feel like I'm a part of their community, and I enjoy this. So I think, like, even that it is a big challenge to reach in this point, because it is. Imagine they look at somebody like completely different than them, but then they realize that it's okay, because I'm not doing anything bad. Actually, I'm helping their kids. So they start to understand and to respect more, to even coming over. We had one time one parent that got frustrated because he couldn't register, because it was finished our registration. And then he started to knock on the gate and yell at us. And then the guy from the bakery, he came, was like, why you're doing this? She's a good person. Don't do that. And then my teachers, they look at me, was like, I don't know what you did, but they do like you. I was like, that's so thank you. I said, like, thank. And I said, sorry for the guy. I told him, I was like, be patient. You come back in 3 months, we'll do the registration for your kid. I wish I isn't double the number for the kids, because I have 225 kids, but my waiting list is more 300 there that I cannot receive, because if I get more kids, it means I have no quality, and I don't want that. So it's this is one challenge too for us there.
Well, it looks like you have a lot of challenges, and I'm sure Russia, through a lot of the project that she did in also in Egypt, she was also involved. So I would like to know your input about this, Russia, a little bit.
Yes, of course, we were involved. I like the idea of, like, when in a camp, you have the capacity to outreach and get children on board and do then the activities that are well designed and well thought through. And like the different experiences that Shirley has talked about, of their specific pedagogical approach, etc. So it's quite good to see that such approaches and such initiatives are taking place in places in camps. For us, it's quite different, because of course refugees are embedded within the hosting communities. So thinking of anything would entail always creating a space where everyone has to be there, like Egyptians and refugees. And this is what we have tried. Maybe Insaf is actually a better one advocate to talk about the child-friendly spaces and the schoolyards that we tried to create in some of the public school spaces that host refugees. Yet there are a lot of child-friendly spaces that are only dedicated for refugees in Cairo as well. So these are urban spaces that are dedicated to create a safe space, a space of expression for the children and for their families and mothers specifically. And these examples have also contributed a lot to their well-being, to their psychological and social well-being, and to their also options of understanding the culture and getting more, between brackets, integrated into. So thanks, that quite a perspective that we would like to see in camps, and we have it to a certain extent in Egypt, in Cairo. The part I was working on deals more with the part of having like public spaces that both refugees and naturally the surrounding host communities work with, are in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you a lot.
So thank you very much, Shirley, for the project Hub Space. We are really, we liked, you know, the way how you presented and the way how you also shared, you know, your experience. For me, it's always, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, when I ask about the future, it's about the future of the camp, actually. It's the way that today we always, and I think we discussed this before, in a way that the camps could at a certain level be, how we call it, not the way to be dismantled or to be completely not under, let's say, the jurisdiction of NGOs and international cooperation. And for me, it's about how things are happening in terms of coordination with the other actors on the camp, how you will be able, you know, to be able to share the resources, because we understood that there is a very difficulties to reach resources. Like you said, it's even to have backpacks for children, it's not possible, materials, etc. And with the map that you showed, showing the number, today is that you're trying to overcome these limitations based on personal efforts and personal, you know, based on people who are trying all the time to make these changes. And I just, you know, go back to a discussion when you said, yes, INSAF, but you know, soon there will be nobody will be taking care of that. What about this kind of self-resilience of the community? What about the parents being involved in the education of their children? What about the fact to give a hands-on, or let's say to give, you know, now, let's say to pass your activities and your, you know, all what you are doing to be replaced in the future by the locals themselves and not being all the time there sustaining them?
Great question. Awesome question. Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I trained the teachers to be from camp. Most of them, they are mothers, and that's the main reason why I chose them, because I want to pass my knowledge, so then if I cannot be here for any reason, they can still keep running the project. We don't know until when we're gonna be able to provide support or to even be here supporting them. But if I tell you the truth, like maybe not this year or next year, but I think like in 2 or 3 years, I think like the project will run by itself, because the main basic things, they learn it already. So it's no reason to finish. I mean, I'm here for a long term. It's like, it's completely clear in my head that I won't be here less than 10 years. It won't happen. I think now that approach 7 so fast, it's going to be much more than that. I'm planning about 15 years in Middle East region, doing the same thing. So I think like now that's the main thing that we are doing. About the camp being a camp, that's another issue that we're thinking about it, because like one of the things that I had in mind too, and I'm still working with friends here and asking for advice how it would work, is to open a project in the city, because Kawergosk is a city. Darashakran is in the middle of nowhere, but Kawergosk is a city. So why not start a project inside the city to help the locals? Because most of the locals are actually refugees too. So this would be a good thing too, if the camp ever, like if it's nobody supporting the camp anymore. So did I answer your question? I can't hear you. You're mute.
Yes, I'm mute. Yes, thank you very much, Shirley. You did answer my question, and thank you very much for that. Just we might take a break, because some of the panelists are asking maybe to have 5 minutes break, and we will be back. You just stay there. I mean, we will be back in 5 minutes, and we will have with us Alejandro Javier Colella from Argentina, and he will be talking about a case an interesting case as well about governance, about inclusion, and about the right to the city. And I think it will be great to have, you know, at the end, a kind of small debate, sharing our experiences and sharing our thoughts about what's happening around the world in terms of coexistence and about placemaking and creating a place for all. Thank you. See you.
Can I just say thank you before you guys go? Just thank you, Leila, so much for all the input you put it to make this happen. Thank you, girls. Rasha, was amazing to hear you. So thank you so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for everybody who participated on that.
Thank you very much, Shirley.
We're really glad to have you with us, Shirley, and we are, yeah, we're looking forward to see what's going to happen with the project. So for everybody, yeah, I will go to grab a coffee.
Don't close your links because the
don't close the link
to come back again. So just keep it as it is. You can go grab a coffee, you know, say with your children, and we will be back like exactly in 5 minutes. unmute myself. Now you can hear me here. Here we go. Hello. Wait a moment. It's crazy, huh? It's different from, I can't hear you because you're on a microphone off. So maybe I will help you by unmuting. Here we go. Ask to unmute. Yes, here we go. So anyway, we were live, so people have seen, you know,
Yes,
live
okay.
Facebook. So it just, you know, it's good to it's the first time we try the webinar, so it's quite different
Okay.
from the meetings, and especially that we just get, we did actually testing yesterday, but that's why I said, yeah, but you know, it should work, the link here. Exactly. So we had this morning a very interesting presentation from Russia, and we had also from Shirely.
Yes, I hear Shirley from the second part of his
The second part, yes.
intervention. Yes.
It's interesting to see the results. Hi, Laila. This is my
Hi.
co-host, Laila.
Hello, Laila.
Alejandro.
Hi, Alejandro. How are you? Nice to
Hi,
meet
how
you
are you?
virtually.
Yeah.
So I would just share here just to read Alejandro's presentation and just to have a wrap up about what we did first. And then Alejandro, do you wanted that you test sharing screen first?
Okay.
Let me stop and then you can. Yes, perfect, perfect, perfect. So should we, everybody's here with us? Should we start? Yes, 5 minutes gone. Okay, great. So I will share here again. So welcome everybody again after our little break. We had this morning a great presentation, 2 lectures already, with Rasha Arous about displaced placemaking and community organization experiences of refugee hosting area in Cairo. And we had as well an introduction about Hope Space. It's a project to create safe and educational hubs for children in refugee camps. And I'm so happy to have with us as a third lecture from Argentina, we have Alejandro Javier Colilla. He is the founder and executive director of Global and Local, a consultancy group working to build more sustainable, more resilient, and more human cities. Former executive secretary of the Federal Council for Human Rights, Argentina. He is a strategic advisor for the Common Goods Project, International Program on Democracy, Society, and New Economies, Universidad de Buenos Aires. Former General Director of the Victims Attention and Assistance. And he's with us today, Ribera of Quilmes, Limitations on Built Urban Spaces with Social, Environmental, and Economic Potential for the Community and the City. Thank you very much for joining us, Alejandro, and we are happy and looking forward for your presentation.
Thank you, Insaf. Thank you, Laila. I'm happy to be here and sharing experiences. And here I could hear Shirley's presentation. It's very interesting hearing that refugee camps and how they are working there. Well, I share with you screen. Well, why I choose the Ribera of Quilmes case to talk about, as Isaf said, about the right to the city and how we use public spaces in vulnerable contexts. First of all, I think that public spaces are essential to build more healthy, more inclusive, more resilient cities. And in some cases, it is the only place where some communities could play, could have an amusement place, could socialize, and have a nearest encounter with nature. I want to understand, and I want to talk with you and discuss at the end to understand why or how the built environment and the natural environment put limitations on on building these public spaces, and to understand the conflicts or the consequences for building these kind of public spaces because of the conflict between decision makers and the community, and how that limitate the building or the development of these spaces. Something about the territory to introduce the context. The Ribera of Quilmes is placed on the coastal of the Buenos Aires metropolitan region and in the city of Quilmes. It's a 10 kilometers long and 2 kilometers width place with two neighborhoods, Villa Luján and Villa La Ribera, with 37,600 people living there. It's the 6% of the population of Quilmes city. From both sides, there are two green protected areas by the municipality law, with native forests, urban biodiversity. Very interesting to visit those places, and we have there two green buffers. But also we have some problems there on the Ribera of Quilmes. The first one, the Ribera suffers an average of 4 floods per year of 3.5 meters water level. Taking on account, it's an average of the last 20 years that with the statistics of floods. And also we have three main problems. That is the contamination of the river, an existing oil pipeline, and the burn of trash in different areas of the river. So that's the context of the Ribera of Quilmes, where these communities live, where these communities use the space and live with these problems every day. But I want to now share you, since 2012, there have been 4 urban projects developed by the national government, the provincial government, and the municipal government with architecture studies and urbanists and universities. All of these projects try to modify the environment condition, the environmental conditions, the capacity of enjoyment of the inhabitants, and to reduce these impacts of the environmental impacts and the urban impacts of the city. One, I want to add another indicator. The Ribera of Quilmes is divided from the city by a highway. So the Ribera of Quilmes is disconnected from the Quilmes city. And that's another limitation to think on an urban development. The first project I want to share with you is this one. They create an executive unity to think how to regenerate the Ribera of Quilmes, how to improve the accessibility to the Ribera, how to protect the natural heritage of the Ribera, how to build or upgrade the slums and settlements of the Ribera of Quilmes, building residential houses, the sanitation of the Ribera because of the floods and the waste as we see, and the recovery of the river, and build urban equipment for that public space. These projects, this project only don't works because some things where I will tell you further, and it's only in paper, so it's not advanced. This is the second project following this one I told you before. The name is Costa de la Plata. Costa de la Plata is a real estate project to build in the River of Quilmes and in that public space. Buildings of 40 floors, commercial areas, and on my point of view, they want to destroy the environmental, the building and natural environment, and to expand the city of Quilmes, but pushing out the residents from Ribera, and trying to connect not the Ribera with the Quilmes city, but the Ribera of Quilmes with another place similar to what this one that they are proposing at the Buenos Aires city. So we have the recuperation of harbors and this kind of cities for real estate projects. Well, finally, this happens. Social protests, judicialization of the conflict, and this project, as the other one, stops. Don't go further. This is the third project I want to share with you. It's a project of integral recovery of the River of Quilmes public space. Returning to the first project I show you, taking into account some issues of that, it was focused on hydraulic works to reduce the floods, waste treatment, make of the public space a beautiful place, and build connectivity between the city of Quilmes and the Ribera. This project advanced partially, but stops because of, principally because of, again, the protest of citizens of the Ribera, because it wants to change the identity of the Ribera of Quilmes. And the last project, it's now, the municipality presented 4 months ago. They want to build a shale in the Ribera of Quilmes, and a big place to recycling waste, and build infrastructure occupying those green areas that make of the Ribera of Quilmes one of the most interesting places. So this was another project that have some problems, and this was the reaction of the inhabitants of La Ribera. We are now with protests and a negative reaction or opposing this last project I show you. So this conflict, so the limitation of urban projects are, one of them is the conflict between decision makers and citizens. No? We see it for interesting projects, for urban developing projects that could improve the living and the design of the public space. Finally exploit in a conflict, on an urban conflict with the inhabitants. So what is the problem, or what is the problem with these kind of projects, and when decision makers make or intend to make these projects, what they are not doing, what are the limitations, not of the place, not of the nature or built environment, but from those who have to take decisions. Once perhaps we can think that is investment or the need to build a structural infrastructure to reduce the contamination or reduce the incidence of floods, or perhaps the economic development of the area. But I think they are not limitations, those things, those four things. I think that the biases of the political system and the government system are limiting the capacity or boost changes in the Ribera. And finally, what is lacking here, and perhaps from my point of view and our organization point of view, is the lack of citizens' participation in these projects. We need to hear, the key is hear the voice of those who are living in these spaces. We are not hearing, or decision makers are not hearing, the voice of those who live in this space in the Ribera. So citizens' participation and citizens' engagement is the key to improve this public space, and we are working on this with global and local. And why we talk of citizens' participation and citizens' engagement? Because people is using this space how it is now, without problems of contamination of the river and problems of infrastructure, but people is using this public space. Not only the residents or the inhabitants, but also people from other neighborhoods that find in the Ribera of Quilmes a green space to play, to enjoy. In a survey that we do a couple of years ago, we asked the community how they perceive the Ribera of Quilmes. Some of the answers are that why you like the living in the Ribera of Quilmes. Some of the answers are, it is my place, I don't change it for anything. It is the place I was born, it is my home. So there are a connection and an identity of those who are living in the Ribera with this place, with this public space. And 35.6% of people we ask that are not residents of the Ribera of Quilmes told us that they came periodically to the Ribera of Quilmes, 1 or 2 times a month, and 28.3% of people we asked told us that they came to the Ribera during 1 time a month. So it's a very Ribera of Quilmes have a lot of potential to build more human, more accessible, more interactive public space. And I think that in that point of view, public spaces are one of the issues to build the right to the city. To end my presentation, I'm interested on the dialogue and answers, and not only my answers to the questions, but all of the participants. But to finish with the presentation, some hope of how we can build for the future a better place or a better public space. The picture on the right are children playing with some organizations, try to build some of that squares accessible for children. And the photo of the right is my son. I live in Quilmes. We use with my family to go to the Ribera of Quilmes, and I want to build, or why we're working with our organization there, because I want that my son could use this place with his family in the future. And we enjoy very much. The river have a huge potential for all of us. The public spaces have a very huge potential for every one of us, and we think that decision makers must see this, hear this, and we are working on it. As I shared with INSAF some month ago, our consultancy group works principally with local governments to try to help them to understand this and to hear the voice of the people of the communities. So thank you very much, and I'm open to the questions, reflections.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for this presentation about, this, let's say, waterfront quarter or district, because it's also why I emphasize on waterfront, because it's something that actually automatically bring up, like you said, investors, bring up, entrepreneurial planning, bring up the top down, bring up a lot of, let's say, perspective of profit. And here what you have been showing as well, it's the way, the triangle that we have between already a very strategic, site or district, which normally was something also used by people for leisure, for, it's a way to go out of the city, crowdness, etc. And at the same time, we have the citizens, the people who lives there, and in opposition, we have the top down, or let's say institutions, which are for them, I think here we are, for me, at least to just make it also clear for our participants, why I wanted to highlight these projects, and I like that you did, because it highlights the way how, even though we know what's the right thing to do, we still keep resisting to it, and how it's very hard to change actually, and to kind of face these kind of, top-down decision makers who are still also driven by other incentives rather than participation, because we all know that we've learned actually participation and so on. Their roots are in American Latin. They are coming from, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, etc. This is where is the hub where we've learned how citizens can participate in their shaping their environment. And you show as well, because I had this discussion also with one of my colleagues, we said the unique big problems, it's about governance and it's about decision makers. Because when you show this example as well, it reminds me of Alejandro Aravena. Once he shows an example of such site, which has been also at risk of flooding, and that actually they come up with the fact that they have to go through the citizens to find a solution, and to make people that they found a kind of economic model that leads that at the same time that the government and the locals could get profit from it, but at the same time making people enjoying. And it was like a forest place where it's changing through the years, etc. I'm so curious how you can work with them. Which kind of, you know, especially because you are in the middle of that, you're into these discussion, debates, negotiation, etc. How you feel, how difficult it is to make the mechanism of making people participating in this project happening in the future?
Thank you. The first, I think now with your reflection is, it's important to understand what is happening in the territory. So and sometimes push the conflict. I could say it here, but if there are some local government representatives, sorry about this, but we need to push the conflict.
Yes.
From the communities, to push the participation and push the conflicts. Why? For the local governments are very difficult to hear the people. They have a lack of hearing, a problem of audition. I don't know. Perhaps one thing you said is the economic interest and political interest, etc. But the first step is pushing the conflict, working with the community to engage them, to empower them, and to build, as we used to say, to equal the power. So to build equality in power, because sometimes economic interest or political interests are more powerful than community. So that's one step. And from the point of view of local governments, we are working in two lines. One is sensibilization. What we are doing, inviting the government and also the municipality mayor to the place, to the city, to the places. But not only to visit them as they used to for political, for elections, but going to the place, hearing the people, understanding, facilitating processes of hearing each other, because sometimes the community also don't hear the politicians and why they are doing what they are doing. And not, as I said in the examples, those 4 projects are not, perhaps the second one, yes, but the other 3 are not negative for the community. The problem is that they are not hearing the needs and the identity and what the people on the River of Quilmes needs. So it's about hearing each other. And also we are doing some trainings or workshops with local governments to sensibilize them about participatory processes and how to make these changes, not with big projects, but small projects that could the residents that they are with the goal is to improve their living and not to make a big investment or economic investment to gain some economic or political factors. So I think that's the way we are working today. But first of all, pushing the conflict. I think that's something that happens in Latin America the last years. that we are pushing the conflict in different levels,
it's a
national
kind of
levels.
activism. It's actually urban activism, and I think also in many countries actually it's happening the same way. For me, it's very strange because in the last 10 years we have been witnessing a little bit, you know, that at a certain point local governments and institutions have been inclined to hear more the citizens and participation. And I feel like in the late 3 years we have also a kind of resistance towards that. It's basically, I have a lot of questions towards the future actually of cities, because I've seen that we have so much knowledge today about how we can implement you know, inclusive cities, how we can, and spaces, how we will be able to create citizenship through awareness, working with youth, etc. And I see also that you much were aware. What I like from one of your posts, because you are, I think that your platform is great in terms of resources, it's the way that you talked about behavior studies. And behavior, the fact that you are much more now interested of the way why people decide upon things, why they say yes to things and no to others, and trying, and I think this is where you are emphasizing of the fact to make people listen, to make people kind of, it's not about rationality, like people saying, yes, this is the good things to do, we go for it, but it's more about that we are confronting something that beyond our hands. Actually planning became also against us, not an instrument. Architect, as we've seen with their project, crazy ones with their, you know, this visualization that they're working actually, I don't know for whom. And of course, citizens that they are kind of angry. And of course, it ends up, as you said, to a kind of violence as an expression of kind of, you know, to highlight, to speak through anger, through violence, through many things. And it makes it harder. I think that today it's very complicated in a way that we need much more facilitators, much more people trying to be counselor, mediation between people, to convince them toward other in direction rather than others. For me, it's let's say, actually I don't have an answer about that, because this is what I keep hearing all the time, that today it's not a matter even of resources. It's not a matter, we are confronting sites which are also need recovery, as you showed, by the pollution, by the problems of also flooding and tsunami. Research are provided as well. And all what we can see, it's actually even governance, because they are local governments, they are voted for. So there are people who are elected as well. So I can imagine if the case of Tunisia, for example, or in Egypt or others, where today it's very top down, you know, governance, which is very centralized decision-making and centralized system. And it's the same happening. It's the same happening at the same time. So Leila, do you have any questions? I just talked a lot with Alejandro. I think we have a lot to say.
Well, he brings a lot to the table. That's to be for sure. And say, well, thank you, Alejandro, for a very, very interesting case. I mean, for me, I have always thought about water, you know, as a bringer of hope and a bringer of life to anything. You know, all of cities, or let's say ancient cities, ancient civilizations are, you know, water, let's say they're water connected somehow. And water is always like a place to flourish, which seems in your case is like there's a lot of limitations and obstructions on allowing this water and this river to become, you know, the live heart of the city. It is also like how it connects us, you know, water. And you were also mentioning the river being also separated somehow by a highway, and how people are trying to reconnect, you know, even regardless to this pollution and these drastic situations, people are still trying to reconnect and trying to find the river somehow, you know, they want to approach it. So maybe I will start my questions, but maybe let's start with the first one is, for me, it was also very obvious some things that are happening from bottom. I mean, I'm sure that as an architect and as a professional, you're approaching the problem from, you know, where you think the roots and the most important points could be, you know, let's say tackled from governance. But I would be very curious also to know if you have, some insight about what people are doing, you know?
But he's not an architect, Alejandro, which is really interesting.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the profession that you're doing is like, you know, trying to tackle this from this kind of lens, let's put it this way, is very interesting. But I would love to know also if you have, you know, we are also talking about the theme of nudging these limitations. So what is happening on the ground? What is the bottom up? That would be very interesting for me to know.
Well, thank you, Leila, for the question. Some things are happening from the bottom. I think one I try to show and share is that people in general is moving to the river. That's the first thing I think it's it's one thing that could help to understand what we could do in the future with the river and the community. So people is moving to the river, is using the public space. That is happening every day. And what happens in the community is that the community is changing also the public space with I don't want to say tactical urbanism, because it's now everywhere we are using that words, but they are doing little interventions on the public space to help those who are coming to the river to enjoy the space. Basketball playgrounds, as I show in one of the pictures, places for the kids, and that's the organizations and the community from bottom up that they are showing the way, and also the local government see that and build on that. So it's interesting how doing we are hearing us, not only doing we are hearing us each other. So that's one thing I want to share with you, that from your question, that what is happening from the bottom. But it's interesting that the way answering to the reflection, or the last reflection of INSAF, how violent reactions or how protest reactions we can change it, or we can change those behaviors that are natural because we are feeling things and we are angry and we want to protest and be here. That's one of the behavioral changes I see in the cities. People are showing their feelings, and that's why they are protesting. I think that how to help with different methodologies, facilitating processes, how to help the people change those reactions to making things in the territory, and that is happening here. Yes. From bottom up, not from up to the bottom. So I think that's the way that is what is happening in the Ribera, but it's difficult because, as you say, the river is very attracting, but the river also it's a problem for the inhabitants because of the frequency of the floods and the contamination. So we need to reconnect people with the river.
Is there a way that you created, for example, or the idea to create a kind of a council where these projects are discussed and also explain to the community and having a public voting on it, and trying as well, maybe, you know, sometimes in some cases we have competition that are launched like national wides, to be able to have at the same time the community involved, and at the same time the professionals, and coming up with an idea for it.
Yes, this don't happen with the 4 projects I show you.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen that the government open a participatory process or a council to hear auditions, to hear about what different stakeholders of the city are thinking about these projects. So perhaps the future is that the way we have to work is building institutional spaces of participation.
For that,
I think that's one of the methodologies that works in some cases, in some cities, that we can do by example, but here don't work. But if we think of another one, another project, perhaps they will need institutional build institutional framework for the participation. Yes, of course, but principally with the community, with the neighbors, with the neighbors. Not only council institutionalized, but roundtables, walking the space, making those movements with the community.
We have another 2 questions. We have Dr. Passant from American University and French University, and she's also very active in community project in Egypt. She had a question for you, and also we have our panelist Shirley after that.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank you, Alejandro, because you have touched a point that is going to be my departure point in the next talk, inshallah. My main, we have the same situation here in Egypt. 2 years ago, Norman Foster has visited Cairo in a Lafarge holism event, a very huge event. He was showing some of his projects with another two European architects, Lacton from Paris and another Swiss. And
I think I can't hear you anymore, Dr. Bassant. I think it's for internet. I think we lost you for a while. So maybe we wait for like 2 minutes. She will be reconnecting again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have an unstable connection, unfortunately, when we came to discussion. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please. Yeah. Take your time. There is no problem. We are here.
Yes. And there was a discussion, and they were presenting the projects and how they engaged community before doing any project, versus our governmental presentation while he was showing case the need.
I think we lost her again.
Dr. Passant? Well, till Dr. Passant reconnects, maybe I will pass. I will pass to Shirley. She can ask the question, and then Dr. Passant will come back.
Hi, Alejandro. Nice to meet you. Was great hearing you. And my question is like, we know that education helps to transform attitude. That's what I've been going through here, even inside of camps. So why not try to educate the population in the region instead of just like pushing the government? Because I think like the main the main people who are affected are the people who live there and people who goes to visit. The place is amazing. I saw in São Paulo, in my city, I saw like they try to work on the river, on the main river of the city, and it's been years and millions of dollars invested. But like, if the people are not well educated to protect their environment, you're gonna spend like 100 years trying to fix the place and not be fixed. So my question for you is like, what are you guys doing to give information to the people? So I think like nobody better than an architect to prove the point that why it's better to keep an environment clean. So what have you guys been doing with that? Did you understand my question? Was clear?
I understand. Thank you, Shirley. Nice to meet you. Yes, we are not working on that, but there are very much social organizations working on citizens' education on the river of Quilmes, focusing on the contamination of the river and how they pose the waste on the river and the different places, how they burn waste. So there are organizations working on education. We have some interesting projects, libraries, popular or social libraries, and working with the kids. I'm political scientist. I'm not architect. So my point of view is perhaps different. That's why I told about pushing the conflict. But I understand you. It's a key issue, the education in these cases, because if we don't educate the citizens on their responsibility of keeping the public space, or how to use it, on how to maintain it clean, etc. Perhaps any investment it couldn't help in the future, as you put the example of Sao Paulo.
Yeah. This is that's a very even I know maybe it's not the thing that you do, that has another organizations doing that, but it's a thing that it really has to be strong, like how to discipline people, because you give information, you give them the power of choice, so then they choose to do or not a thing. So when you inform them, but when they don't know what to do with the information. So I think like information is the key for everything. So sometimes even to change the government mind, because the more people are involved, the more people has voice to talk about what's going on. So congrats on your project, and it's amazing to hear you.
Thank you. And yes, information is power. From the point of view of political sciences, information it's power for the people to make decisions. And yes,
maybe I will a little bit provoke you regarding your background from political sciences. And yeah, the question is, like, it's always about dismissal of let's say the power of the people somehow. You know, we in political sciences, I mean, the tendency, let's put it this way, not everybody, but the tendency is more to think through organizations and institutions and how to create, you know, let's say the solutions from within the government. But I think what is missing, or not missing in a sense of missing all the time, but it's also about allowing people to become part of this change. They want to be. You know, people obviously try to go to the river. They obviously try to use this pop-up or social spaces. Let's put it this way. You're talking about tactical urbanism, like things popping up, trying to change. And then the government is seeing that and trying to build upon that. I mean, you have been already saying that. And for me, it's also very interesting to also stretch a little bit, you know, this kind of mentality of working only from within the institutions, and yeah, include these small things that are happening on the ground. And so my question for you is, how do you think this could, you know, be included in such what you have described as a rigid thinking of change?
Thank you, Leila, for the question. I think many times institutions or social organization are a problem in these cases where we want to engage citizens directly on processes. So I don't think that always institutions or organizations are the best way to canalize the people's demand.
Mm.
So we have to build processes, not institutions.
Exactly.
We have to build community, not institutions. We have to hear each citizen's voice, not an organizational voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because for our experience, we have some problems with that because of the representations. As political representation is questioned, organizational, social organizational representation is also questioned right now here in Argentina, as taking as an example. So I think that from the point of view of the community, that's why we are working with citizens' participatory processes, and not as INSAF share that councils where representative of different sectors come and discuss. Open citizen processes where because I think that we have a problem of representation, not a politician problems or government problem. We have a problem of representation, and that's why sometimes the projects I share fail, because we have intermediaries. These social organizations or institutions are the buffers between the politicians and the citizens.
Which is also good, because in other contexts they would have been implemented. It's also, just as a closure, thank you very much for your intervention today, Alejandro, and I hope that we will have future collaboration in the future, and to share also a lot together in terms of ideas and project, etc. Just to also, maybe for those who are listening to us, and after that, we are not also ending it here, because this is give us materials to reflect on. We will be writing about it, we will be discussing these ideas, we will be trying to put them into their context. It's also interesting to see that I come back again to a discussion that we had in the past with one of advisories groups for government, that actually themselves, they don't believe of the fact that in the future will rely on this as much as to have self-organized communities. And these kind of example, for example, like in Switzerland, they do, it's self-organized communities where actually there is no structure or political power, as everything is taken it. Resources are managed by the community, the lands is managed by the community, the decisions are taken, and actually voting or taking decision or local governance, it's a daily activity. And it's a kind of mechanism, like you said, and processes that it would take a little bit of time to implement. It's based more also to what Shirely said about teaching, about working in paving the way for the future, but at the same time dealing with what I call them today are actual emergencies, because the sites, and we are really running after the clock in terms of this, sites, project, whether it's rural or urban, etc. And we are almost 8 billion today population in this world. And it comes back that's why all sharing the knowledge from all over the world, it's very, very important, because we are facing the same challenges. Wherever we are in this world, we are dealing, for me, it's so familiar, the project that you've shown, I can tell you now, hundreds of them that we are confronting on a daily basis. And also that it will be maybe, we will see today also with another lecture, but it will be coming in an hour. It's another side of the coin, where some of the professionals who were before those who are part of this kind of problems, trying today within the system to break it down and to change it. So they are architects, but they're trying to completely change it to be much more as global and local, because I like what you've done, and I invite everyone to check your website and the working that you are doing, because you are working hard to share the knowledge, to be mediator, to be advisors. You understand very well your role, and you are pointing, you know, you're putting your hand on the right spot. It's today, the challenge is to be able to mediate, again, to be able to formulate people's idea, to create a hub where people can negotiate spaces and places and install and to learn the way to govern. And this is something very crucial today that we need. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Just to give you a slide, you know, before we ending and leave you, thank you very much for your time. We will have this afternoon with us Natalie Frakonsky and Ruth Garcia from Way Architecture Think Tank, Narratives of Failed Optimism, that we will have, I think, very profound discussion and debate about that. And tomorrow we have another examples from Palestine about creating hope on the ground, the case of East Jerusalem by Tariq Nasser. And it's about placemaking and the project that he's actively in. He's the founder also of Sinsila there, though. So tomorrow we will discover that. We will have also From Limitation to Opportunities, Children and the Right to Play with Renette from the Netherlands. And we will have Dr. Passant, which is also another side, which she's talking about the down of materials, a deep investigation to capture the intellectual power of materials. And this is, we will see how it's important as well in the city making. And of course, we will end our, you know, these 2 days of lectures, dwelling and homing in refugeehood with my colleague, Leila Zibar. So thanks again for accepting the invitation to be part of this 2 days event. And we will keep you updated for the future, because we will be also, you know, capitalize on this knowledge sharing, and looking forward for the next session tomorrow. Thank you again.
Yeah, on my behalf, thank you very much for being with us, sharing with us all your experiences, the limitations, and also, yeah, let's put it in the new sessions words, the failed optimism that we have and we have to face on our daily lives. We all somehow live in all these situations. We're part of it, and the communities and even the governments are part of this life. And somehow we need to remind people that you are here, and also as we are. So you are also citizens of the city as you are responsible for it. So thank you very much, and looking forward for more and more experience.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Insaf. Thank you, Leila.
Thank
you for the invitation.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Rasha. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.